So you want to create a personal website with a blog using Remix.run, Tailwind.css and Hygraph as an headless CMS? Well, you have come to the right video because that's what we will create today. The interesting thing we will do is we will create it in under 2 hours, and also I will fix live errors with you. So let's check out the demo on my screen right here and let's go. On my screen you can right now see what we will create in today's video. So we have our personal website right here. On the left I have an image and a small description about myself and some links. And on the right side I have a longer description about me and what I do. Then on the navbar right here I have a blog page. And once I click on that, you will see the individual posts that we will create in today's video. Now, if I click on one, you will see that the redirect is almost instant, and that's because we prefetch our data in the background when I hover over the link. Now, the next tab we have right here on the navbar is the Projects tab, and this is just the projects that I have created, and right here you see an example which is an e-commerce shop. I can also click on that, and then I get redirected to the YouTube video. Also, you see we have dark mode working right here, and also the important thing is that we use dark mode with a cookie session. So if I now reload my page, you will see nothing changes, we don't get any flash, and that's because the user preference is stored inside of the cookie, so we don't have any flash on a reload. So that's what we will create today, so I hope you have fun, and now let's go. So to start off, the first thing I will do is to cd into my desktop directory and cd into my YouTube directory, and run the command npx create remix at latest. It will now ask me for a name, and I will name it personal website. Now I will also use just the basics, and I want to deploy to Vercel. Also, of course, we will use TypeScript, and now let's install it. Once that's finished installing, let's go to Visual Studio Code and open the project, and as you see, I already opened it. But if you want to open it as well, go on top to File and click Open Folder. So right now our project is completely empty and we haven't installed anything. So the first thing I want to do is to install Tailwind.css. So I will go to the Tailwind.css website, and now let's click Docs and let's go to Framework Guides. Now let's scroll down to Remix, and right here we have a quick start guide provided by the Tailwind.css team. And we have already done step 1, that's to install our project or to create our project. Now the second step is to enable built-in Tailwind CSS support. So let's go back, let's open the remix.config.js, and now inside of the modules.export I will write Tailwind equals to true, just like that. Now let's continue. So the third step is to install Tailwind CSS. So let's copy the command, let's go back and let's open the terminal. And let's just paste the command inside of here. Once that's installed, I will go back and you will see that the next step is to configure our template paths. So I'll copy this content path. Let me go back. Let's open the tailwind.config.ts, and right here I will delete the old content and just paste what I've just copied. If I now go back, you will see the next step is to add the Tailwind CSS directives. So I will copy them, and now inside of the app folder I will create a new file called Tailwind.css, and I will just paste what I've just copied. If I now go back, you will see that the next step is to import the CSS file. So let me copy that, and now let me go to the root.tsx, let me scroll up, let me close my terminal, and right here I will delete this export links function and just paste what I've just copied. Also right here on top, I will delete the CSS bundle href import. If I now go back, you will see that the last step is pretty much to start our build process. But right now I don't want to do that, since I want to do a few things before that. So I want to install a development dependency from Tailwind CSS. You can go to my README and just copy the command. And all it does is it installs a development dependency by Tailwind CSS, and it's the typography plugin. And with that we can pretty much style text, and we will use it to style our body, which we use with the rich text editor inside of our headless CMS. So let's click install, and right now it also won't work. So to make it work, we will go to the tailwind.config.ts. So inside of the plugins table, all I have to do is paste that right here, and all it does is pretty much tells Tailwind to bundle this plugin please, so we can use that, and that's why we have to require it or tell Tailwind.css right here that we want to use that. Now that's done, I want to install a few more packages, so I will also copy them from my GitHub. And if you want to use the same, just go there and copy them inside of my README. And the first package we install is Remix Themes. Remix Themes is pretty much the equivalent to next.js themes. So it's pretty much used to make a theme switcher, so dark mode and white mode. And then the user preference is stored inside of a cookie. Then I also installed Prism.js, and Prism.js is pretty much used to style code embeds. So inside of our CMS Hygraph, we will use code embeds, and I want them to look good, so that's why I use this right here. Also, I have to install two GraphQL related packages, so GraphQL and GraphQL request. Well, GraphQL, you always need that, and GraphQL request is pretty much our client. And we need them because our headless CMS Hygraph relies on GraphQL. Also, we install GraphCMS rich text React renderer, and that's pretty much there just to render the rich text that we get from our headless CMS. And the last package we need is headless UI. And headless UI is pretty much a component library, but which is not styled, so we have to style it on our own with Tailwind.css. And now where you know what these packages are, I can click install. Now where everything has been pretty much installed, I can close my terminal, and now the first thing I think I want to do is actually create the dark mode or the cookie for the dark mode. So inside of the app folder, I will create a new folder called utils, and inside of the utils folder, I will create a file called session.server.ts. Now what does this server keyword mean? If you are new to Remix, you probably don't know that. And all it tells Remix is to pretty much only run the code on the server. And if I wouldn't use that, Remix would pretty much have the overhand and it could run the code on the client and on the server, but I don't want that. I only want my code to run in the server, so that's why I use the server keyword. Now, the first thing I have to do is to import the create cookie session storage. So let's write import create cookie session storage, and that's imported from Remix.run node. And another thing I want to import is the create theme session resolver from Remix themes. So let's write create theme session resolver, which is imported from Remix themes. So that looks good. Now I can create the cookie session. So let's do that. I write const session storage. This will equal to create cookie session storage. And let me open the object. Now the first value I will have to give it right here is a cookie. Now this will be an object with multiple fields. And the first one is the name. And for the name, I will just choose _remix themes. The next field will be the domain. And the domain part is pretty interesting since I only wanted to pretty much work in a production environment. So if we are in the production environment, I wanted to have the URL displayed. But if we are in a dev environment, I want it to be null. So what I will do is in process.env.node.env, and if this is not equal to development, what I will want to do is to set it to an URL. Right now I don't have an URL, so I will just write some gibberish. But if this is false, so we are in the development environment, I want to set it to null. So what we will do is once we push our code to Vercel, I will change the node env to production, and right here I will change it to our actual URL, but right now I don't have any URL, that's why I will just use this gibberish. Now the next step what we'll do is the path, and for the path I will give it a slash, and the slash pretty much ensures that the cookie will work on all routes. If I for example would write /blog, this would tell the cookie to only work on the blog route, and I don't want that. Now the next step is the HTTP only, and I will set it to true. That's pretty much just for security reasons. The next step is the same sites, and right here we'll set it to legs. Then the next step is the secrets, and the secrets field is an array with a secret inside of it. Right now I will just write secret, but you of course should generate a secret and paste it inside of here. And the last step is the secure field. And the secure field is also interesting because we only want to enable that in production. So I will do again an if statement. So if we are pretty much in the production environment, I will set it to true. But if it's not in the production, so we are in a development environment, I will set it to false. So what I will do right here is in process.env.node.env, and if this is equal to the development, I will set this to false. And if this is not true, so if this is in the production environment, I will set it to true, so secure will be true. Now that looks good, and I think we are actually finished with that. What I have to do now is to pass that to our create theme session resolver. So what I will do is then export const theme session resolver, and this will be equal to the create theme session resolver, and I will pass the session storage. Now that looks good, and we are finished now with this file. Now we also have to pretty much use it in our root.tsx. So let's do that. Let's go to the root.tsx, and the first thing I want to do is actually get our state. So if we are on white mode or dark mode. And for that I will use a loader function. And if you're new to Remix, you probably don't know what the difference is. So Remix has a convention with a loader and with an action. Loader is pretty much used to get data, while action is used to post data or put data or delete data. So if you only want to get data, we use a loader. And if you want to manipulate the data, so if you want to post or put or delete, then you just use an action. And since we want to use a loader to pretty much get our theme from the session storage, I will right now use a loader, and for that you will write export async function loader, and right here I will use the loader args, which is imported from Remix.run node, and let me just open the function. Now inside of here I also want to get the request object, and then also let's continue. And now I want to get the theme, so I will do a const empty object, and this will equal to await theme session resolver, which I import from utils/session.server, and right here I will pass the request object. Now if I click on a control spacebar, you will see I get some types, and I want to get the get theme. Now I also have to return that, so I will write return object, and the theme should be equal to get theme, just like that. That looks good. Now let's continue with the app. First of all, I want to delete this export default, and I want it to only be in function. And before I continue with the app, I will have to create a new export default function. So let me write export default function. This will be called app with providers. And now let me open that function. Inside of here, first of all, I want to get my theme. So right here we use a loader and we fetch the data. But now I have to get it somehow in my front end. And for that, Remix has a convention called use loader data. So right now I will just do a const empty object, and this will equal to an use loader data, which I import from Remix.run React. And inside of here, I want to use a generic of type of loader. And now again, if I click on option spacebar, I will see that I get the theme inside of here. Now that looks good. The next step I want to do right here is do a return statement. So I want to return a theme provider, and the theme provider is imported from Remix themes. So let me import that and close that. Now TypeScript complains a bit, and that's because I have to add a few props. And the first one is the specified theme. And the specified theme is just our theme that we get from our loader function. Now the next step is the theme action, and the theme action will be /action/set theme. So that looks good. Now inside of the theme provider, what I want to do is give it the app function. So let's do that. Now we are finished with our app with providers. Now I want to continue with the app function right here. So the first thing is I want to again get my theme. So I will do a const empty object, which will be equal to use loader data. Inside of here, I will use again a generic of type of loader. And now if I click again on control spacebar, you will see I get the theme. So that works perfectly. Another thing I want to use is the hook from Remix themes, which is the use theme hook. So I will do a const array inside of here I will write theme x, and this will be equal to use theme, which I import from Remix themes. So that looks good. And now I can continue inside of the return statement. And the first thing I want to do is inside of the HTML element, I want to write data minus theme, and this will be equal to theme x. And now I want to use a nullish collision. So if this is undefined or null or something, I will just use an empty string. So that looks good. And now we have to do one more thing. Right under the meta tag and above the link tag, so right in between the two tags, I will have to use and prevent flash on wrong theme. You'll also have to import that. And now inside of here, we will have to set our SSR theme, which will be equal to the boolean. And in the boolean, I will just pass the theme, which we load from our loader function. So now we are actually pretty much finished right now. And one more thing we actually have to do to make it work completely is to go to the Tailwind.config.ts. So inside of this file, I will have to let Tailwind.css know when I use the dark mode. So if you can remember, right here I use the data minus theme. And that's pretty much what I will have to tell Tailwind inside of here. So I will write dark mode, and this will be equal to an array. And let me write in comma so the error goes away. And inside of the string, I will have to write class and then use a comma and write here again a string. And now I will use the array of data minus theme, and this will be equal to the dark state. Now this should actually work, I think. So let's continue for now, and then we will see later if we get any errors. So the first thing I will want to do is actually create a navbar. So let's do that. So right here in the app folder, I will create a new file, or a new folder actually, called components. And inside of the components folder, I will create a file called navbar.tsx. Now inside of here, I will use a shortcut called RAFCE. And if you want to use the same shortcut, go right here into the extensions tab and then use the ES7 Plus React Redux React Native Snippets extension. So now we can continue actually. So the first thing I want to do is actually delete this div, since I want to use the disclosure, which I import from Headless UI React, and let me close that. Now I will have to give this disclosure an as, since I want to show this disclosure as a nav. Now you could also use a div, but I think the nav is a better element for this. Inside of here I will also get in state from Headless UI, which is the open state. And this will pretty much tell me when the disclosure is open, so when our navbar is open or when it's closed. So inside of here, let me just do a return statement. Now the first thing I want to do inside of here is create a div element. So let me do that, and I want to style that. So I'll give it a class name of max width 6xl, mx will be auto, px will be 4, sm will be px of 6, and lg will be a px of 8. Now inside of this div, I want to create another div, and I will give it a class name. So we will have flex, justify will be between, and I will have age of 16. Now inside of this div, I will create another div, and let me style that div. So let's give it a class name of flex, justify will be between, and width will be full. Now inside of this div, I will create another div, and I will style that div, so let me give it a class name of flex and item center. Now inside of this div, I will create a link, and I import that link component from Remix.run React. And if I close that right now, you will see TypeScript will complain, and that's because I have to use the toProp. And I will just use a strings right here, and I will post it to the index page. That's why I will use a slash. Now inside of this link, I will create an h1 tag, and I will write Marshall, and I will wrap it in a span, and inside of the span I will do a block. Now let me style that h1, so I will give it a class name of text 2xl, and font will be medium. Also I will style the span, so I will give it a class name of text teal 500. So that looks good. But right now I want to see our navbar on the screen. So I will open my terminal and run npm run dev. Now it will spin up the dev and is server and it will open on localhost 3000. Now you will see that we only have the default template Remix ships with, because if we open the underscore index.tsx, that's the template Remix ships with. But I don't see my navbar and that's not what I want. So to show the navbar, what I will do is go into the root.tsx and now I will create a layout function. So let's write function layout. And let's open that function. Inside of here, I want to return a div. I won't style that div, but I will import our navbar inside of here. So this will be imported from components/navbar. Also, I want to give it under here a main element. And inside of here, I want to paste my children. But first of all, I have to get my children. So right here, I will destructure the children. And now TypeScript will complain because it does not know what type of children are. So let me do that. Let's fix that. So children will be type of React Node. And React Node is imported from React. So that looks good. Now inside of the main element, I will just pass my children. And now that looks good. But if I now go back, you will still see nothing. And that's because we have to use it inside of our app function. So now I want to pretty much wrap everything from live reload up to outlet inside of our layout function. So what I will do is copy everything from live reload up to outlet, and right here I will paste my layout and I will paste back what I have just copied. Now if I go back, you should now see the navbar, and that's what you do. But one thing I see right now is that our navbar has a lot of margin right here, but our index page right here, so our children, go up to the screen, and I don't want that. I want the index page or our children to have the same amount of margin as our navbar. So let's change that. Inside of the main element, I will give it a class name of max width of 6xl, mx will be auto, px will be 4, sm will be px of 6, and lg will be px of 8. Now if I save that and go back, you will now see we have the same margin with the children and with the navbar. One other thing I don't like right now is actually the background color. So right now the background color is black and I don't want it to be black. I want it to be a bit more grayish. So let's change that. So inside of the body, I will give it a class name and we will give it a class name of bg white. Text will be black. Also dark will be bg of gray 900. Also we will have a dark which will be text white and age will be full. Selection, this will be bg gray 50 and the dark will be selection bg gray 800. Now if I save that and go back, we should now see that the background color changes, and that's what we see right here. It's now not more black, but it's more of a grayish color, also maybe a more bluish color, however you want to see that. And I think that looks way better. And what we can do now is continue with our navbar. So let's again open the navbar. And what I want to do now is create the links. So right now we have only our logo, but on the right side, I want to have the links of the pages. So the home page, the blog page, the projects page, but also I want to have a theme toggler. So let's do that right now. So under the link and under the div, I will create another div element and I will style that div. So let's give it a class name of hidden. SM will be ML of 6 and SM will be flex and SM will be space X of 8. Now inside of this div, I will create a nav link, and nav link is imported from Remix.run React. And now, if you didn't know, we have pretty much two links with Remix. First of all, you have the normal link and you have the nav link. And the interesting thing with nav link is that it gives us an active state. So for example, if we are on the home page and our nav link right here is the link for the home page, the active state will be true and we can style that based on that state. So for example, if it's true, I want to give it a border, but if it's not active, so if we're not on the page, I want to leave it just blank and only have the text. So this might be a bit complicated, so let me show it to you, and it will be much easier to understand. So the first prop we will have to give it is the 2, and the 2 right here will just be the index page, so I will use the slash. Also I will give it a name of home, and now let me style that. So I will give it a class name, and right here we will get our is active state, and now I want to use in ternary. So if isActive is true, I want to use a question mark, then I will give it a class name of border teal 500, dark will be BG gray 900, dark will be text white, and then we will have age of full, inline will be flex, items will be center, px will be 1, pt will be 1, and we'll have in border bottom of 2 and in text of small, and font will be medium. Now if this is false, I want to use a colon right here, and now I will give it a class name of border transparent. We will have in text, which is gray 500. Also I want to use in dark, which will be text gray 300. The next class name will be dark hover, which will have text white. Also I will use inline flex. Items will be center, px will be 1, pt will be 1, border bottom will be 2, and I will have a text of small, and font will be medium. Now if I save that, and if I go back, we should now right here see our nav link. And because it's active right now, you see in border right here, and teal border. And that looks good. Now I will have to create 2 more links. So let me just copy this nav link 2 more times. And let me paste it 2 more times. And what I want to do right now, the second link should be the blog. So let me change it to blog. And the 2 will be to /blog. And the third link will be to projects. And the 2 will be to /projects. Now if I save that and go back, you will still see we have small error. So let me check what the error is right now, since it's not aligned correctly. And after looking for a bit, I saw that I've misspelled items of center. So let me correct that. I will just do an items of center, and I will also fix it for the other 2 ones. And now if I go back, we should now see that it's aligned correctly, and that looks good. If I now would click on the block, you will now see we get an 4 not found, and that's correct, and that's because we haven't created that route right now. So that looks good. What I want to do now is make it also mobile friendly. Right now it only works on desktop, and I also want to create my theme toggler right here. So let's continue with the theme toggler for now. To do that, I will go under the nav link and I will create a button, and inside of here I will create an onClick handler. But before I do anything with the onClick handler, I have to pretty much import our hook from Remix themes. So the hook will be const and array theme and set theme, and this will be equal to use theme, which is imported from Remix themes. Now this is pretty much the same to in React use state. So right here we have our theme, which pretty much tells us the state, so is it dark or is it white mode, and with set theme we can manipulate this theme state. So let's do that right here. Now inside of here I want to get our set theme, and I want to get the previous state, and I want to use the previous state to pretty much check if it's dark mode. So if the previous state was dark mode, I want to create the light mode. But if it is the light mode, I want to use the dark mode. So pretty much it's just a toggler. So what I will do right here, if previous is equal to theme.dark, now theme is imported from Remix themes, and be sure that it's uppercased. And you don't need to use that. You could of course just write in a string dark. But I think that if I use that theme.dark, that just ensures a bit more consistency, but also a bit more type safety. So right here, if the previous theme is equal to the dark theme, I will use ternary. So this will be then theme.light. And if it is already on white mode, I want to use the dark mode. So I will use theme.dark. So that looks good. But now I also have to pretty much give the button the 2 icons. So if we are on dark mode, I want to use the sun. And if we are on white mode, I want to use a moon icon. So for that, I will go to hero icons, and right here, let's first of all search for the moon. And before I copy that, I want to go right here, and first of all, I want to check it. So if theme is equal to theme.dark, what I want to do is use ternary, And if this is not equal, let's just use a colon right here. Now, if the theme is dark, I want to use the sun. So let me again search for the sun. And now let me copy the JSX and paste it right here. And if it's this white mode, I want to use the moon right here. So let me search for the moon and copy the JSX and let's paste it inside of here. Now that looks good, but one thing I want to do inside of the second SVG, I want to change the color. So let me do a text of gray 500. Now that should look good. And now if I go back to our local host, you right here see our theme toggler. And now if I click on that button, it should pretty much change the theme to white mode. So let's do that. And as you see, it works. So we can right now click the button and it will change the theme how we want it to change. So that works great. And now let's continue with making it mobile friendly. So what I want to do is if the user is on a mobile device, I pretty much want to have an icon where the user can click on it and we have a disclosure panel. So to do that, I will go under the button and under the two following divs, I will create another div. And now let me style that div. So let's give it a class name of -margin right of 2. Flex, items will be center and SM will be hidden. Now inside of here, the first thing I want to do is actually create a disclosure.button. So let's do that, disclosure.button. Let me close that and let me style that. So let's give it a class name. This will be inline flex, items will be center, then we will have a justify of center, padding will be 2, rounded will be medium, text will be gray 400, we will have a hover which will be text gray 500, then also a hover which will be BG gray 100, then I also want to have a focus which will be outline of none, focus will also be in ring of 2, also I want to use a focus which will be ring of inset, and then I want to use a focus which will be in ring of teal 500, and then in dark of hover will be BG gray 800. And then the last class name I want to use is the dark hover, which will be BG of gray 800. Now inside of this disclosure.button, I want to pretty much now check if it's open. I want to show the X mark. So I want to pretty much use it to close that button. But if it's closed, I want to use the bars icon. So what I will do right here is use the open state. So let's do an open. And we get that open state if you scroll up a bit right here. And this pretty much tells us if the disclosure is open or if it's closed. And what I want to do right here is use a ternary. So if it's open, I want to return something. And if it's closed, I also want to return something. And now what I want to do is if it's open, I want to use the X mark. So let's go to hero icons right now. And let me search for the X mark. Inside of here, I will copy the JSX and let me paste it. And now let me search for the bars. And I will just use the bars -3. Let me copy the JSX. And let me paste it right here. Now this should actually work. Now if I go right here and let me make the screen smaller, you should right now see the bars right here. But if I click on them, you will see only the icon changes, but we don't have a disclosure panel. And that's what we will do right now. To create this disclosure.panel, what I want to do is go under the disclosure.button and under the 3 following divs. And under them, I want to create a disclosure.panel. And right now you will see an error. And let me hover over it. And it tells me JSX expression must have one parent element. And yeah, that's correct. I forgot that actually. So right under the open state, I will use just the empty brackets. And then I will use the closing empty brackets just under our disclosure.panel. So right here. And now if I save that, you will see that the error should go away, and that's what's happening right now. So now I want to style that disclosure.panel. So let me give it actually a class name. So the class name right here will just be SM of hidden, since I don't want to show the disclosure panel on bigger screens. And then inside of this disclosure.panel, I want to create a div, and let me also style that div. So let me give it a class name of padding 2. Padding bottom will be 3 and space Y will be just 1. That looks good. Now inside of this div, I want to pretty much use the nav links. So the panel should have some links, and that's what I will do right now. So I will again use the nav link, which I already have imported it. And right here I will give it the name of home. And I will also give it the to prop. So let's do an to. And the to will again be an index page. So I will use the slash. And also I want to style that. So I will give it a class name. And inside of this class name, I want to get again the active state. So I will do an is active. And if this is active, I want to use a ternary. So if is active is true, I want to give it a class name of bgteal50. Border will also be teal 500. Text should be teal 500. Then we should have a block. Padding left will be 3. Padding right should be 4. Padding y should be 2. And border should be left 4. Then we also have a text of base and in font of medium and in dark of BG should be gray 800. Now if this is false, I want to use a colon, and right here we'll get a border which will be transparent. We'll have a text which will be gray of 500. We'll also have a hover which will be BG gray of 50. I want to use a hover of border gray 300. Also in hover, which will be text gray 700. Then I want to use the block. Padding left will be 3. Padding right will be 4. Padding y will be 2. Border left will be 4. Then I also want to use a text which will be base. Font will be medium. And dark will be text of white. And dark of hover will be BG gray 700. Now that should look good, and if I save that and now go back and open, so click on this button right here, it should now open the disclosure.panel, and that's what you see right now. So now let me copy this nav link and let me paste it 2 more times. And now let me change it. So the second one should be block, and the 2 will be to slash block, and the third one will be the projects, and this will be to slash projects. Now if I save that and go back and now let me open the bars again, you will now see that we have our 3 items, and as you see I've misspelled block, so let me fix that. This should look like that. Now let me again open the bars and you will see that looks perfect, and if I hover on that it also looks good. One thing I don't like right now is that I don't have the theme toggler right here. So let me add that. If I go right here on top, so what I will do is pretty much just copy the button that we used beforehand to use the toggle switch. So I will just copy that right now. And then once that's copied, I will go down a bit and right inside of the div and right above the disclosure.button, I will just paste that. Also what I will do is style that button. So I will give it a class name, and the class name will just be in margin right of 4. Now that should look good, and if I now go back, we will now see our theme toggler right on the mobile device. I can use that, and now if I click the bars, you will still see everything, and that works perfectly. So our navbar is now finished, it's desktop ready and it's mobile ready, and we can now continue with our index page. So I'm now inside of the index page, and what I will do right now is actually just delete everything. I don't need that, and I want to start off blank, so I want to start off fresh. And the first thing I will actually do is again use RAFCE, the shortcut, and I will rename it to index page. Now that looks good. Also what I want to do is import my image right now. So let me make my screen smaller, and right here I have already pretty much imported my image on the desktop, and now I want to put it inside of the public folder. So I will just paste it right here into the public folder, and now I have my image right here, and that's great. Now I can continue, and now I actually want to import that image right here. So what I will do is an import, which will just be me from, this will be public/me.jpg. So that looks good, and now I can continue. So right here inside of the return statement, I will create a new return, and I will return a div. Let me style that div, so I will give it a class name, which will be divide of y. Then we will have a divide of gray 200. Then I want to use in dark, which will be divide of gray 700. Now that looks good. inside of this div, I will create another div, and let me style that div. So I'll give it a class name of space y2. Padding top will be 6, padding bottom will be 8, md will be space x of 5. And then inside of this div, I will create an h1, and right here I will just write home. Let me also style that h1, so I will give it a class name of text will be 3xl, font will be extra bold. Also I want to use a leading of 9, tracking should be tight. Then I also have a text which will be gray 900, dark which will be text gray 100, and SM will be text 4XL, SM will be leading of 10, and I will have an MD which will be text of 6XL, and the last one will be medium which will be leading of 14. Now that looks good actually, and if I go back you will now see our home right here. And now let me continue. So under the h1 and under the div, I will create another div. And now let me also style the div. So let's give it a class name of items, which will be center, then space, which will be y of 2, xl, which will be grid, then xl, which will be grid of calls 3, and an xl, which will be of gap x8, and also an xl, which will be space y of 0. Now that looks good. Inside of this div, I will create another div, and let me style that. So I will give it a class name of flex. Flex will be call, items will be center, padding top will be 8. And inside of this div, I will create an image. And for the image, I will use the image that I've imported on the beforehand. So I will just use an object and write me. For the alt, I will just do an image of myself. And then I will also style it, so I will give it a class name of h48 and a width of 48. Then I want to use an rounded, which will be full, an object, which will be cover, and an object, which will be top. So now you see my image right here, and what I want to do now is create a small description right here. So my name, where I'm from, and a few icons to maybe LinkedIn, GitHub, and my YouTube channel or something like that. So let's actually do that. So under the image, I will create an h3 tag, and right here I will first of all style it. So I will give it a class name of pt4, padding bottom will be 2, text will be 2xl, font will be bold, leading will be 8, and then we will also have a tracking which will be tight. Now inside of here I will just write my name. You of course can write your own name, and once that's finished I want to create a p tag under the h3 tag. Let me first of all style that, so I'll give it a class name of text which will be gray 500. I will have a dark which will be text gray 400, and then I want to use text which will be center. And what I write right here is just, hey, my name is Jan and I am a full stack developer. Now that looks good, and what I want to do now is pretty much create the little icons. So the icons for GitHub and LinkedIn and etc. So what I will do is go under the p tag, I will create another div. So let me do that, and I want to style that. So I will give it a class name of flex, space will be x of 5, and I will do a padding top, which will be 6. Now inside of here, first of all, I will give it an a tag, and the href will be for me just a hashtag, but you of course will add your own links, so I will just leave it an hashtag, but of course change it for yourself. And for the target, I want to use an underscore blank, and I think the first icon I want to use is a GitHub icon. To do that, I will go right here to React SVG icons, and I will search for GitHub, and once I find that, I will just right here copy that. Now this will load a bit, and right here I will just copy this SVG and let me paste it down below. Now let me delete the props, let me delete the width and the height, and let me give it a new class name of width 8, h will be also 8, then a text which will be of teal 500, and a hover of text which will be teal 600. If I now save it and check it out, so I will go back to my localhost 3000 and reload it. Let me also use write mode. you will now see my GitHub icon right here. Now I will want to use 3 more icons, so what I will do is just copy this A tag and let me paste it 3 more times. So if I save that now and go back, you will now see that I have 4 icons, so 4 times the GitHub icon. But I don't want that, so let me change that. So the next icon I will use is the LinkedIn icon, so let's search for LinkedIn. Now this will load for a bit. And now let me just choose the first one. I'll click on that and now I will just copy the SVG. Let me go back and let me go to the second SVG. I will delete this and paste that. Now I will copy the class name of the first SVG. I will delete the props, the width and the height and just paste it right here. Now if I go back and reload it, you will now see I have GitHub, LinkedIn. Another icon I want to use will be the email. For the mail I will just use this icon right here. So let me again copy the SVG. Then I will go to my third SVG, so we have here the first, the second, and here will be the third. I will again delete the props, the width and the height, and I will copy the class name from right here and paste it right here. Now if I save that, reload everything, you will now see GitHub, LinkedIn, email, and I think for the last icon what I can use right here will be Twitter. So let me search for Twitter, and I will use the first one, so Twitter circle. Let me copy the SVG. Let me go to the last SVG, delete that, paste the new one, delete the props, width and height, and I will just copy the class name and I will paste it right inside of here. Now if I go back and again reload my page, I should now see all 4 icons and that looks great. It works on white mode, it works on dark mode, it works everywhere. So that looks good. Now the next step I will want to do is actually create some text. So on the left side we have a small description and links, and on the right text I want to have a longer description about myself and what I do. So let's do that. To do that, you will go under the last A tag and under the 2 following divs and you will create a new div. So let's create that and let's style that. I will give it a class name of pros, and now this class name pros comes from the typography plugin that we have installed at the start of this project. So with that we can just style it and we don't have to style each p tag or h tag separately. So I will do pros, we will have a max width of none and pros of LG. I will have a padding top of 8 and padding bottom of 8, and dark will be pros invert. And then I will also have an XL, which will be call span 2. Now inside of this div I will create 3 p tags in total, and now I will just paste the content that I have created on my GitHub. You can write your own, or you can just copy my content for the start and then change it at a later stage of this project. So now let me paste everything and I will come back once I'm finished. So now I have created my 3 p tags and I have copied the text and pasted inside of here. And now if I save it and go back, you will now see here on the right the small description that I have just created. If I go to white mode, you will see it still works inside of here and it also works in dark mode. So I think we are actually done with that, and even if I make it small, so if I make it as a mobile, you'll see it works perfectly. So that looks great. Now the next page I will want to create is the blog page. And to do that, I will go right here into the Explorer, into the app folder and into the routes folder. And I will create a new file called blog.tsx. Now the first thing I want to do is actually again my shortcut RAFCE, and I will rename it to uppercase blog, just like that. So let's start with the UI. So the first thing I want to do right here is empty brackets, and inside of the empty brackets, let's create a new div element. Let's style that div, so let's give it a class name of divide will be y, and divide will be gray 200. Then we will have a dark, which will be divide gray 700. And then inside of this div, I will create another div. Let me style that div, so let's give it a class name of space will be 2. We'll have a padding top of 6 and padding bottom of 8, and let's also give it a medium of space y5. Inside of this div I will create an h1 tag and I will name it all posts, or let's say all blog posts actually. And now let me style that, so let's give it a class name. I will have a text which will be 3XL, font will be extra bold, then we will have a leading which will be 9. I will have in tracking, which will be tight. Then we will have in text, which will be gray 900, and dark, which will be text gray 100. And I want to also give it an SM, which will be text 4XL, SM, which will be leading of 10. And I want to give it a medium, which will be text 6XL, and MD of leading 14. Now, if I save that and go back, and if I click now on the blog, we should get redirected to /blog, and you see right here all blog posts. So that looks good. And what I want to do now is actually to create our content inside of our headless CMS. So let's do that. So I'm now on Hygraph.com. So a general overview is that Hygraph is a headless CMS. We will use it to store our content, so our blog posts, and then at the end we will query it using GraphQL. So I think what we can do now is click on Login, and if you don't have an account, click Get Started. But since I already have one, I will click Login, and now inside of here I will click Add New Project, and for the project name I will name it Personal Website. Now for the region I will use Frankfurt, but if you live in a different country, for example Brazil or Canada, choose the one that's nearest to you. So now I can click Add Project. So once that loads, you will get redirected to the dashboard of Hygraph, and the first thing we will do is to create a schema. So on the left sidebar, click on Schema, and right here we have the Models tab, and right here we will click on Add, and now we have to give it a name, and the name will for now be the post, and the API ID and plural API ID gets generated automatically, so you don't have to generate it on yourself. So now I can click Add Modal. So once that's loaded, you will get right here redirected to an empty schema, and we have to add our fields. So our post inside of our blog will have first of all a title. So I will click on single line text. The display name will be title. We will use it as a title field. And for validation, let me check. I want to make it required, and let me also set it as unique. Why not? Now let me click Add. Once that's added, now I want to add an overview. So our blog will pretty much have a small multi-line text, which was just a small overview of the blog post. So right here I will use multi-line text. For the display name, I will use overview. I won't use it as a title field, but let's click on validations. But I want to make it required, and I won't set it as unique. Now let me click Add. So the next field I will use is actually the rich text, since I want to create a body element where I pretty much create all my content and my coding embeds and images and everything like that. So let me click on rich text. I will name it body. I won't enable embeddings, but you can do that of course. For validations I will make it required, but I won't set it as unique. Now let's click Add. Now the last field I want to use is actually the slug, and the slug is pretty much an unique identifier we will use. So instead of an ID, I want to use a slug, and this will also help with SEO purposes. So the name will just be slug. I will generate it from the template, and I will generate it from the title, and you have to wrap it inside of these brackets. So let's do that, and let me also check validations. I want to make it required, it will be unique, and that looks good. So now let me click Add. So we are now finished with our post modal or schema, however you want to name that. And I want to create one more schema, which will be the project schema. So let me click right here on Add, and the display name will just be project. And let me click Add Modal. Now right here I will again have an empty schema, and I have to add a few fields. So I will start off again with a single line text, and this will be again the title, and I will use it as a title field, and for validations I want to make it required, and I won't set it as unique. So now let's click Add. So the next field I want to use is a title image. So let's scroll down a bit and let's search for the asset picker. So that's right here. Let me click that. The display name will be title image, and I won't allow multiple assets since I only want one image. For validations I will make it required, and I will click Add. Now I will want to add two more fields, and the first field will be again an overview. So let's search for multi-line text. The name will be overview, I won't allow multiple fields, but for validations, I will make it required and I will click add. Now, the last thing I want to create is actually something like a link. So if the user clicks on the project, you should just get redirected. And sadly, right here, I don't have something like a link field. So what I will do is just use a single line text and the display name will just be link. And for validations, I will make it required and click add. And then inside of this field, so inside of this link field, I will just store a link. And then if the user clicks on the project on the website, he gets redirected to the project. So it could be a website or a YouTube link or whatever you want. It can be whatever, it just has to be a link. So now we are actually finished with that. So the next step I will want to do is actually to connect to Hygraph from our front end, or in that sense from our back end inside of Remix. So to do that, I will click right here on Project Settings. I will search for the API access, and then inside of the API access field, I will want to copy the high performance read-only content API. So let me copy that right here. And what I will do now is go back and I will create a new file called .env. And inside of here, I want to create an environment variable. So let's name it Hygraph API key. And this will be equal to the API key that I've just copied. What I also want to do is give it a node env. So it will be node env uppercased. And this will be right now just to string, which will be development. And once we deploy our application, I will change the node env to deployed. So that looks good. What I will want to do now is actually create a GraphQL client with which I can connect to Hygraph. To do that, I will go into the app folder and into the utils folder and create a new file called hygraph.server.ts. And inside of here, what I will do is an export const Hygraph, and this will be equal to new GraphQL client, which I import from GraphQL request. And inside of here, I will have to pass my API key. So right here, I will write process.env.thename. And I actually forgot the name. So let me go to the .env and I will just copy the name right here and I will paste it right here. So the name is Hygraph API key. And you see TypeScript complains a bit, and that's because it doesn't know if it's string or if it's undefined. And to fix that, I will just write as string. So that looks good. Now we have pretty much created our GraphQL client, and now we can fetch data from Hygraph. So now I'm back in my block route, and what I could do now is create a loader function to load the data. So let's start with that actually. I will do an export async function, which will be a loader. I will supply my loader args, and let's open that function. Now inside of here, I would write a query, but actually we don't know right now how the query will look like. So to check that out, let's go back to Hygraph, and now under the API playground, we can pretty much create a query. So right here, if you first of all go inside of that, there will be some demo query, just delete everything. And now the first thing we want to do is actually fetch some posts. So I will click right here on posts. So now what do I want to get inside of the posts? Well, the first thing will pretty much be the created at. I want to know when we created our post. Then maybe let's get the ID. Also maybe let's get the overview. What else? Also I want to get the slug. And maybe also let's get this title and the updated at. And I actually think that's all. Now you will see right here on the right our query, and if I click on display right now, you will see we get 0 posts. And that's because we haven't created any content, so let's create some content. Let's go right here inside of the content tab. Now inside of here I will click add entry, and if you want to create pretty much the same block entry I will create inside of here, just go into my GitHub README and just copy the demo block I will create right now. So now I have created everything. I have created a title, the overview, the body, and the slug has been generated already. One thing I will also add maybe is a code embed. So right here we have the code block. Let me click that. And now I will just write const hello equals to the string where we say, hey, how are you? And that looks good to me. And what I will do now is click save and publish. This will now save it and also publish it. If I now go back to the API playground and click on this place symbol right here, you will see now that I get the posts right here. So we get one post, and that's because we only created one post. So for demo purposes, I will just create a bit more content, and you again can copy that from my GitHub and then paste it inside of here. So now I've created in total 4 blog posts and they are finished. If I now go back to the API playground and click on the play button, you will now see I get in total 4 posts with the slug, the overview, the updated ad, the created ad. So that looks good in my opinion. And what I will do now is actually pretty easy. All I will do is just copy this query right here that I've created. And then I will go back and now inside of our loader function, I will do a const query. And this will be equal to GQL, and you have to import that from GraphQL request. And now we will have to add 2 upticks, and inside of here I will just paste the query I have just copied. So now we query our GraphQL endpoint, and that's done actually. Also I will rename that from my query to posts, and that looks good now. But now we also have to fetch that, because right now I only have written a query, but we don't fetch it. So let's write const posts, and this will be equal to await Hygraph. I have to import that from our utils, and then dot request, and I will pass the query right here. What I will also have to do is a return statement. So let's do a return JSON, and inside of here I will return the posts. So that looks good. Now what I want to do is to get it in the front end. So inside of here I will do a const, I'll get the posts, and this will be equal to use loader data, which I import from Remix.run React, and now that looks good. But if I hover now over the posts, you will see that the posts are of type any. But I don't want that. I actually want to know what the types are. So what I will do is create an interface. So inside of the utils folder, I will create a new file called interface.ts. And now the first interface I will create is the post. So what I will do is an export interface, and this will be the post interface. Now inside of here we'll get the posts, which will be an object, and then we'll get a created ad. This will be in string. We'll get an ID, which will also be in string. We'll get an overview, which will be in string, and I will get a title, which will be in string, and I will get a slug, which will also be of type string. What I will also do right here is for the posts object, right here I will use the array symbol, since I will get an array back and not just an individual post. So that looks good. If I now go back, I will want to create another interface. So above the loader, I will create an interface called iappprops. And inside of here, we'll have the posts, which will be of type post, which I import from our interface. And now, where we have the use loader data, I will do an as iappprops. So that looks good. And what I can do now is fetch over that content. So under the h1 tag and under the div tag, I will create a new UL. And inside of here, I want to map over our posts. So I will do in brackets, and inside of here, posts.posts.map, we get our post. And now let me return that. Now inside of here, I will have first of all create an li. So let me do that. And now I want to give it a key, since I don't want any React errors. So I will do in post.id. And then I will also give it a class name of padding y4. Now inside of this li, I will use the article tag, and inside of here, let me first give it a class name. So class name will be space y of 2. We will have an xl, which will be grid, and xl, which will be grid calls 4. xl will be items of baseline, and we will have an xl of space y will be 0. So that looks good. Now inside of this article, I want to create a div tag, and inside of the div tag, let me create a p tag. Let me also style that p tag. So let's give it a class name of text will be base. We'll also have a font, which will be medium. We'll have a leading, which will be 6, and a text, which will be teal of 500. Now inside of this p tag, I will want to use a date. And if I use right here just our post.createdAd, and if I save that and go back, you will see we have an error. And to fix that, we will have to restart our dev server. So let me stop that and clear everything, and I will run npm run dev. And now if I reload the page again, you will still see an error. And that's because right here we have a message of not allowed. But why does this error come? Because if you can remember, we already gave it the API key, so why do we have the error? And that's actually pretty easy. We have to give it an API access. So right here, scroll down to the public content API, and right here let's click add permissions. Now inside of here I want to give the permissions to read. For locals let's use all, and for stages I want to use the published stage. If I now click add, this will load for a bit, and if I go now to localhost 3000 and reload the page, you will now see that the error is gone and everything loads. We now get 4 posts, or in that sense we get 4 dates, but as you see the dates don't look good. And to change that I want to actually format the dates. So right here let's go back, let me delete this post.created@, and right here let's write new date. I want to pass the post.created@, and then right here we will do a to ISO string, and I want to split it, so dot split, and I want to split it for the T, capitalized T, and let's use the first item inside of the array, so 0. If I save that now and go back, you will now see we have a beautiful date, and that looks way better in my opinion. So we can now continue. So under the p tag and under the div tag, I will create a new link. So let's import link from Remix.run React. I will give it a 2, so right here, and the 2 will now be dynamic. So let's use upticks, and let's use a post and slash, and right here I will use a dynamic slug, so post.slug. So that looks good. I want to also style it, so let's give it a class name, and I will have a space which will be y3. I will have an XL which will be in call of span of 3, and that looks good. Another thing I will actually want to do is to prefetch the content. So I will use a prefetch, and I will use intent. So intent pretty much means that if I hover over the post, it will pretty much fetch the content in the background. So that looks good in my opinion. Now inside of the link I will create a div, and inside of the div I will create an h3 tag. Now let me style that h3 tag. So I'll give it a class name of text 2XL. Font will be bold, leading will be 8, and tracking will be tight. Also, it should be of text gray 900, and dark should be text gray 100. Inside of here, I want to get now the title, so let's use the post.title. And now under the h3 tag and under the div, I want to create another div. So let me style it. Let's give it a class name of prose. We'll have a max width of none, and text which will be gray 500, and in dark which will be text gray 400. Inside of the div I want to get the overview, so let's use post.overview. And if I save that and let's go to localhost 3000, you will now see on the left we have the date, we have our title, and we have the overview right here. Also maybe let me use the white mode, and as you see it also works here perfectly. So we are pretty much finished with the block overview. And what I want to do now is actually create the individual block post page. To do that, let's open the Explorer right here, and inside of the routes I will create a new route called post.$slug.tsx. Now if you didn't know, our route looks something like that right now, and with a $sign. Now in the real life it would look something like post, slash, and any dynamic value. So the dot always means just a slash inside of the URL, and the $sign just equals into a dynamic value. So it could be any value, and we can read the value then inside of our front end, so inside of our Remix application. So let me show that to you. So the first thing I will want to do is first of all delete everything and use my shortcut RAFCE. Now inside of here let me rename it to post slug, and I think we can leave it like that for now. Now the first thing I want to do inside of here is actually get my data. So let's create a loader function. So let's write export async function, which will be loader. I will get the loader args inside of here, and then let me open the function. Also I will want to get the params inside of here. So with the params I can read the slug. So right here let's write in query. So const query will be equal to GQL, which we import from GraphQL request, and we will use upticks. Now inside of here, let me write a query. So we will have a query which will be called posts. And inside of here, let's write post. Now inside of here, I want to get a specific post, not all posts, but one specific post that pretty much equals the slug. So in here, let me write where, and that will open an object. And inside of here, we'll have a slug. And right here, I will want to use the $sign and the object. And I want to have the params.slug. So that looks good in my opinion. And what do I want to get? I want to get the ID. I want to get the overview. I want to also get the published at. And I want to get the slug. I want to get the title. I want to get the body. And the body will be of type JSON. So let's do something like that. Now that looks good. We get our post right now. But I have to fetch that also. So right here, let's write const post. This will be equal to await Hygraph, which we import from our utils, dot request, and let me request the query. So that looks good. What I want to do now is return JSON, and JSON has to be imported from Remix.run node, and let me return our post. So that looks good. What I want to do now is to get that inside of our front end. So let's do that. So let me write const, we get our post, and this will be equal to use loader data. And right here, we now, if we hover over the post, we see we don't have any types. So post is of type any, but I don't want that. So to change that, let's again go to our interface. And inside of the interface, I will create a new interface. So let's do an export interface, and I will name it post ID. Let me open that. And right here, we'll have a post, which will be an object. And inside of here, we'll get an ID, which will be string. We'll get an overview, which will also be string. I will also get a title, which will be string, and a slug, which will be string, and a published at, which will be also string. And I will get a body, and this will be just type of any. So that looks good. And now if I go back to my post.slug, I will want to create a new interface. So let's write interface I app props. And inside of here, I want to get the post, which will be of type post ID, which I import from our interface. So that looks good. And right here, our use loader data will be as I app props. So if I hover now over post, you will see it will be of type post ID. Now that looks good. And I actually think we now can create our content or our user interface. So right here, let me delete the return and create a new return, and I want to return a div. Let's style that div, so I will give it a class name. Of XL will be divide of Y. I will also have an XL, which will be divide of gray 200, and XL, which will be dark divide of gray 700. And I want to use an LG of padding X of 48. Now that looks good. Inside of this div, I will use an header. And let me also style that header. Let's give it a class name of padding top of 6 and XL of padding bottom 6. Now inside of this header, I will create a div. And let me style that div. So let's give it a class name of space Y1. And we will also give it a text of center. Inside of this div, I will now create another div. And I will give it a class name of space Y of 10. And inside of this div, I want to create one last div for now. And inside of here, I will give it a p tag. So inside of this p tag, I want to again show the date. So what I will do is go to the blog and let me just copy this right here, this new date function. And I will just paste it inside of the p tag right here. That looks good. And right here, you will see we get an error, and that's because created at does not exist, and that's correct. What we have to do is use some post.post.published at. And now if I save that, I will also want to style our p tag. So let me write class name, and we will have a text, which will be base. We will have a font, which will be medium, and a leading, which will be 6, and a text, which will be teal 500. Now if I save that and go back, so now if I click on one block, we should now get redirected, and you see we get an error, invalid query. Let me check where the error is. So first of all, I see an error, I used commas, and that's of course not correct. You don't want to use any commas. And right here, the body, I think that should look something like that. Let me save that and reload that again. And now the error is gone and we get redirected to our page. So that looks great and I think we can continue. So what I will want to do now is under the p tag and under the two following divs, I will create another div. And inside of here, let's create an h1 and let me just write right here, we'll get the post.post.title. And now let me style that h1. So let's give it a class name of text 3XL. Font will be extra bold. Also a leading will be 9. I will also have in tracking, which will be tight. Then we will have in text, which will be gray 900. And I want to use in dark, which will be text of gray 100. I will also want to use SM, which will be text 4XL. Then we'll have in small, which will be leading of 10. I will also use an MD, which will be text 5XL, and MD leading, which will be 14. Now if I save that and go back, you will now see we have now our title right here, we have our date, and that looks perfect in my opinion. So what we will want to do now is actually create the content right here. So right now we have the title and the date, which looks good, but our content is not there. Also, maybe before we do that, let's check if white mode works, and that works, so that's good. So now let's create a body. So right under the header, I will create a new div element, and let me style that div. So let me give it a class name, which will be divide y. We'll have a divide of gray 200. I will have a padding bottom of 8. Dark will be divide of gray 700. Then I will also have an XL, which will be divide y of 0. Now that looks good. So inside of here, I want to create another div. So let's do that. Let's give it a class name, which will be divide of y. I want to give it a divide of gray 200. Also, let's give it a dark divide of gray 700. An XL, which will be call span of 3. An XL, which will be row span of 2. An XL, which will be padding bottom of 0. And that's actually good. I think that's all we need. And now let's continue. So inside of this div, I will create another div and let me style that. So let's give it a class name, which will have the pros. We will also have a max width of none. Padding top will be 10. I will also have a padding bottom of 8 and in dark, which will be pros invert. Now that looks good in my opinion. And what we will now do inside of this div, I want to render with the rich text. So to do that, I will go inside of this div and let me import rich text, which is imported from GraphCMS rich text React renderer. And let me close it. So let's do a self-closing tag. And inside of here, first of all, we'll give it a content. So right here we'll have our content. So this will be post.post.body.war. If I now save that and go back, you will now see I have my text right here and my small little code embed. But the code embed is not styled and I don't like it like that. And also if I create any A tags, they also won't be styled. So let me change that. So what I want to do is use the renderers prop. So let's write renderers. And then we'll have a double object. And the first thing I will use is the code minus block. Inside of here, I will now get my children. And then let me just create the function. So inside of here, I want to return that now. And inside of here, now let me use pre tags, so pre. And then let me also style that. So let's give it a class name, which will be line minus numbers. And I will also give it a language, which will be JavaScript. And inside of here, I will also use a code block. And I will just give the children inside of here. Now this still won't work because we haven't imported Prism.js. So let's do that. Let's go to the top. And what I will do is import Prism from Prism.js. And now we get an error from TypeScript. And it tells us that the package Prism.js has no types. And that's correct. And right here it also gives us a fix, which is to try to install the types. So let's copy the command. I will open the terminal and I will stop the dev server. Let me clear everything and let me paste that command, which is just to npm install the types of Prism.js. Now let me click enter. And once that's finished installing, you will see that the error on top will just go away. So now you see the error has gone away. And now I will import 3 more things from Prism.js. And to type that out, that would be a bit too much. So if you want to use the same, I would highly suggest you guys just to go to my GitHub and copy that. So what we have right here is pretty much, first of all, the plugins for the line numbers. That's good. Also, we get our theme. So right here, that's the Prism Tomorrow theme. And we get our line numbers, which is pretty much a CSS file. And right now, the style sheet right here, the two style sheets, they won't work. And to do that, Remix has a pretty handy function that we'll use right now, which is the links function. So let's do an export const links. This will be of type links function. And then I will use an arrow function right here, which will use an array. Now inside of the array, I will use an object. Inside of this object, I will have now to give two fields. First of all, the relative path, so rel, and this will just be in style sheet. And then I will also use an href, which will be theme. And then I will also create another object for the line numbers, so let's do that. The rel will also be in style sheet, which should be in strings. And the href for that will just be the line num, which I have created on top of here, if you can see. Now that looks good, but we are still not finished. One more thing we have to do is pretty much make Prism work. So to do that, let's go right here inside of our function post slug, and inside of here I will use an use effect. I will import use effect from React, and inside of here we will pretty much initialize our Prism. So let's write Prism dot highlight all, and that looks good. Also let's use an array right here as a dependency. So now that should actually work. So what I'll have to do, let's go back. You'll see we get a site can't be reached, and that's because we have to start our server again. So let me run npm run dev. This will now open localhost 3000. I will reload the page, and now you will see we still see no styling. And now where's the error? I'm actually not quite sure. So let me check right here. That looks all good to me right here. We also use an use effect with an empty dependency, which is good. Now let me go up further, and right here I already see the error, and that's the links function. This shouldn't be in uppercase links, but in lowercase links. If I now save that and go back, you will now see that our code block is now styled correctly, and that looks good. So that's great. I think we are done with the code embed, and now I want to style a few more elements. And the first element I want to style is the image. So right here, let's use an image. And right here we'll get our source, we'll get our alt text, we will get our height, and we will get our width. And then let me just return that right here. Now inside of here I will use the normal image tag, and for the source I will just use the source. For the alt I will just use the alt text, so let's use alt text. And then for the width I will just use the width. And for the height, I will just use the height. So that looks good. Maybe one more thing I will do is actually add a class name, which will just be rounded of LG. So that's done. And now I want to style an A tag. So to do that, let's go right here and create an A tag. And again, we'll get here the children. We'll get an open in new tab. And we'll get an href. We'll get an rel. And we will spread the rest. Now let's return that. So let's create a function. And inside of here, I will create the A tag. The href will just be the href. Then I will also use a target. And for the target, this is now interesting. So right here, we'll pretty much use a ternary. So if open a new tab is true, I want to open it in the new tab. So I will use underscore blank. But if it's false, I will just use underscore self. So to understand that better, I will just write open a new tab. Then I will use the question mark, which is a ternary. And if this is true, what I will do is an underscore blank, so it will open in a new tab. But if it's false, I want the link to open in the same window, so I will use underscore self. That looks good. Now I want to do a few more things. I will also spread the rest, so let me do right here, rest. And I will also give it a class name. So right here, this will be a text of teal 500 and a hover of text teal 600. Now inside of the A tag, I will now create a few children. And now that looks good. Now we get an error. So let me check where the error comes from. And the error comes from because I used a colon here. That's of course not right. I should use a comma right here. And now that looks good. And still, if we reload, everything works. So that's great. We are now finished actually with our post slug. So let me check if everything works with write mode. Yes, it works. If I click on our icon right here, or on our logo in that sense, we should get redirected to our home page, which also works perfectly. If I now click on the blog, we come to the blog page, and if I click on one blog item, we get to the post page. So I think that works perfectly. Now the last tab we haven't created, or the last link we haven't created, is the projects link, because if I click on that now, we still get an 404 not found, which is correct. So let's do that. So to do that, I will open the Explorer, and inside of the app folder and inside of the routes folder, I will create a new file called projects.tsx. Inside of here, I will run the command RAFCE, and I will rename it to projects uppercased. So I think the first thing I want to do is actually query the data. And I think we will again use the API playground from Hygraph. So right here, let me click on a new playground. And I think I want to query the projects. And maybe let me get, what do I want? I want to get the ID. I want to get the link. Let me also get the overview. I want to get the title. I also want to get a title image, and to be more precise, I want to get the URL. I don't want to get everything. Let me also see if I want to get anything else inside of here. And I think the last thing I want to get is the published ad right here on the top. So that looks good. If I now click on the play button, you see we have no projects. So let's go back to the content, and I will create a new project inside of here. Now for the project, I will create a title, which will be e-commerce web shop. I will also add an image, so let me click that. So right here it will ask me to upload, so I'll click upload. This will load now for a bit, and now if I go back, you will see one thing, and it says draft, and that's okay. So right now if we would fetch that data, we wouldn't get an URL, but I will change that later. For the overview, I will just write, hey, I created a cool video on creating a e-commerce shop using Remix, something like that. And for the link, let me paste that. And now I have pasted the link, and I'm pretty much done. If I now click save and publish, and I will also click right here on title image, since I also want to publish that, and I will click save and publish. If I now go back to our API playground and click on this play button, you will now see that I get everything I want. I get my projects, my ID, my link, my overview, title, title image, and publish ad. Publish ad is null, but this will change later. That's an error right now. Also, you will see that I have misspelled projects, but that's not really important, I think, for now. So what I will now do is copy this query and go back to our code. Inside of here, I will now create a loader function. Let's export async, a function. Let me spell function correctly, called loader, and I will give it the loader args right here. And let me open that function inside of here. What I want to do now is write the query. So I will do a const query, which will be equal to GQL, which I import from GraphQL request, and I will use upticks. Now inside of here, I will just paste what I have just copied, and now that looks good. What I want to do now is fetch that data. So I write const projects, which will be equal to await Hygraph. We import Hygraph from the utils dot request, and I will pass the query inside of here. Also, I will return that. So let's do a return JSON. We import JSON from Remix.run node, and inside of here, let me pass the projects. So that looks good. Now I want to get that inside of the front end. So I will do a const object inside of here. I'll get the projects equals to use loader data. You have to import that from Remix.run React. And now that looks good. But if I hover now over the projects, the type will be any. And that's because we haven't created an interface for that. So let's do that right now. So right here, I will now create a new interface. So let's do an export interface. This will be in project. And right here, I will now have to give my projects. And then I will have to open an object with all the data. But if you can remember, I've misspelled projects. So I'll go back, and right here, I will just copy that and paste it right here. And now I can create an object, and we will get an ID, which will be in string. we'll get a link, which will also be in string. We'll get an overview, which will be of type string. And we will get a title image. So let's write title image. And this will open an object, and I will have an URL, which will have a string. And the last field we'll have is the published at. So let's do that, and this will be in string. Now that looks good in my opinion. So now I will go back right here inside of our projects, and I will create a new interface called iappprops. So let's write interface iappprops, and inside of here I will write projects, and this will be of type project, which I import from our utils interface. So that looks good, and what I will do now is here I will do an as iappprops. So that looks good. So what I will do right now is delete the return, and let's create a new return, and I want to return a div. Let me style that div, so I will give it a class name. It will have a divide of y. I will have a divide of gray 200. Also I will have a dark divide of gray 700. And then I will create another div inside of this div, and let's style that. So we have a class name of space y will be 2, padding top will be 6, padding bottom will be 8, and md will be space y 5. So that looks good. Now inside of here I will create an h1 tag, and the name will just be all projects. And now let me style that. So I will give it a class name of text 3XL. We'll have a font of extra bold. Also I will have a leading of 9. We'll have a tracking of tight. Also we'll have a text of gray 900. I will have a dark, which will be text gray 100. And I will have an SM of text 4XL, SM of leading 10. And I will also want to use an MD of text 6XL, and MD leading will be 14. If I now save that and go back, you will now see that our project has an all projects title, which looks good. What I want to do now is go under the h1 and under the div and create another div. Let me also style that div, so let's give it a class name of grid. Gap will be 4. We'll have an SM of grid calls 2. We'll have an MD of gap, which will be 6, an LG of grid calls 3, and an LG of gap 10, and a padding top of 8. Inside of this div, I will now map over our projects. So let's do projects.projects.map, and right here I will get a project, and let me return that. And right here you will see we have an error, and property map does not exist on type this object right here. And if I go to the interfaces, the error right here is that I don't use an array. So right here we tell pretty much the type that we only have one object, but actually we get an array. So right here I have to add an array. And if I save that now and go back, you will see the error has gone, and we now can continue. So inside of here I will now create an article, and now let me also style that. I will give it a class name of overflow will be hidden. I will have a rounded of LG, we'll have a border and border of gray 100, and an BG white, and a shadow of small. Also I will give it a dark of border gray 800, and I want to give it a dark of BG gray 800, and lastly a dark which will be in shadow of gray 700, which will be 25% of that. And I do that with the slash right here. So pretty much the opacity is 25% of the 100%. Now inside of this article, I will create an image tag. And for the source, I will use the project.titleimage.url. And for the alt, I will just use image of project. And I will also give it a class name, which will be h of 56. I will give it a w full, and an object will be cover. Now that looks good. If I now save that and go back, you will now see all of our projects, and we see the image. So first of all, that works perfectly. So now I think I can continue. So under this article, I will create a div tag, and let me style that. So let's give it a class name of padding 4, and SM will be padding 6. Now inside of here, I will use an a tag, and the href for here will just be our project.link. That works. And inside of the A tag, I want to use an h3 tag. And inside of here, I will want to give it a project.title. And right here, you see I don't get any types for that. And that's because I forgot it inside of our interface. So we get right here also in title, which is of type string. So if I save that and go back and change that, that would now work. And I would also style that h3. So let me do that right now. I will give it a class name of text LG. Font will be medium. Text will be gray 900. And I will have in dark, which will be text white. If I now save that and go back, you will now see we have the title, we have the image, and this little dark color right here. So I think I can now continue with the small overview. So under the A tag, I will now create an P tag, and let me style that P tag. So I'll give it a class name of margin tab 2. Line clamp will be 3. We'll have a text of small. Also, I want to use leading, which will be relaxed. Then I also want to use text, which will be gray 500, and dark, which will be text gray 400. Now inside of here, I will just use the project.overview. So just like that. And if I save that and go back, we now have our title and our little overview inside of here. What I will want to do now is actually create a small link. So if you click on that, you get to the video for here, for example. So under the P tag, I want to create an A tag again. The href will again just be the project.link. And I also will style that. So let's give it a class name. It will be group. Margin top will be 4. Inline will be flex. Items will be center. I will also have a gap of 1. Text will be small. Then I will also use a font, which will be medium, and a text, which will be teal 500. Now inside of here, I will just write learn more and exclamation mark. If I now save that and go back, you will now see this right here. And if I hover over that, you will see on the bottom left the link to the YouTube video. So if I click that, open a new tab, you will now see the video loads right here. So that works great. So one thing I maybe also want to do is add a small arrow right here. So under the learn more and still inside of the A tag, I will create a span. Let me style that span. So let's give it a class name of block. Transition will be all. And then we will also have a group minus hover, which will be ms 0.5. So that looks good. So right here, I will give it a value of the and sign, then RARR and semicolon. So if I save that now and go back, you will now see we have an error, and if I hover over it, it animates a bit. So that works perfectly, and I'm actually quite confident that we are now finished with our project. I will now click on white mode. Everything works right here. I can again click on dark mode. That works. I can click on home. That works perfectly. I can click on block. I can click on a block entry. We see that. Let me also maybe click on another entry. That works also perfectly. So everything works how it should be. And I think we are now done. And the last step is to deploy to Vercel. Now to deploy our application to Vercel, what we have to do is first of all create a Git repository. So I went to github.com/new, and right here I will give it a repository name of personal website, and you see that's available for me. I will make it public, and now let me just click create repository. So right here GitHub gives us some instructions to create a repository. So to do that, let's go back and open a terminal. And when I open the terminal, I see an error right here, which says error no root matches URL action set theme. And now if I think about it a bit, if I go back to localhost 3000 and if I click on white mode and reload, you will see it will go back to dark mode. So there's definitely an error with our cookie, or maybe there isn't an error and we have just forgot to create the site or the URL for action set theme. And well, honestly, I just forgot to do that. So if we go to the root.tsx, you will see that again. So right here, we will see we have a theme action, which is /action set theme. And I forgot to create that route. So let's do that right now. To do that, I will go into the routes folder and create a new file called action.set-theme.ts. Now inside of this file, we only have to create one small function to make everything work. So if you can remember, there are two types. There's a loader and there's an action. A loader is there to pretty much get data, while an action is there to post data. So you can think of it like an API route. And that's why we will use an action. So I will do an export const action, and this will equal to create theme action, which I import from Remix themes. And inside of here, I have to pass my theme session resolver. And now if I save that, and so let's actually restart our server. Inside of here, I run npm run dev, and if I reload the page on localhost 3000, so I'll click write mode, and if I reload it, you will see we have no errors. You will now see that my preference, so the write mode, is now stored inside of the cookie, and if I reload the page, so let me do that again, it still stays white. And if I go on dark mode, and if I reload the page, it still stays at dark mode. So now our cookie works, and you will see that even though this error is so small, at the end it was just like what, 2 lines or something like that, that such a small error is such a fundamental thing that you have to do. So now everything works, and now I can come back to what I actually wanted to do, and that's to push our website to GitHub. So let's do that. I will now open my terminal, I will clear that, and inside of here I will do an git init. This will initialize a new empty repository, and now I will do an git add and a point. This means that I want to add everything, so I want to put everything inside of the staging environment. And now I want to commit my first message, so I copy that and paste. I want to change the message from first commit to finished. So as you see, I have now git commit, and my message is just this. I have misspelled that, but who cares actually. And I will now copy this git branch, and I will right here just paste that. And then I will add the remote origin. So let me paste that inside of here. And the last step is to push our code. So I copy that and paste that inside of here. Now you will see our code is being pushed to GitHub. And if I reload the page right here, you will see all of the code is here and my silly commit message, which I have misspelled mistakenly. But that's beside the point. Our code now works and it's in GitHub, so we can do the last step and deploy to Vercel. Now, before I actually go and deploy the application to Vercel, I will have to change something in the session.server.ts. The thing I want to change is to delete the domain. I actually won't need that, so let me delete that. And another thing I will change is the secure field. So let me delete everything right here. And for the secure field, all I will do is right here process.env.node_env should be equal to production. And that's all we need. This will be automatically true if it's production. So right here, what I will now do is open the terminal. And inside of the terminal, I will do git add point. This will add everything. And let's do a git commit -m. And for the message, I will do changed session.server, something like that. Now let me click enter and do git push. So now this will push to GitHub, and now we can continue. So I'm back in my GitHub, and as you see, we see right here the commit message, changed session.server. So now we can go to Vercel, and I went to vercel.com/new. And right here, I will import my personal website. And then right here, I will go to environment variables, and let's go back to the code. Let me close the terminal and let me open the .env. Inside of here, all I will do is copy our Hygraph API key. I will go back and I will just paste it inside of here. I won't need to copy the node.env because once I push the code or once I deploy the code, the node.env will be automatically production. So all I will have to do now is click deploy and let's wait for a bit. So, as you see, our website has been deployed successfully, and what we can do now is click on the website right here, and you will see I will get redirected to the website. And now let's test it out. So let me first of all zoom in a bit, and if I now click, for example, on the write mode and reload the page, you will see the preference is stored inside of the cookie. So now it works perfectly. If I go back to dark mode and reload, we don't get any session flash, so we don't get any wrong flash on reload, so that works perfectly. If I now go on blog And now let me, for example, click on exploring Remix.run, and you will see the redirect is almost instant. And that's because we pretty much created this prefetch link. So if we hover on the link, it gets fetched automatically in the background. And that's why if we click on the link right here, it is like instant. So that works perfectly. And now also let me check the projects. And right here we have our projects. And if I click on that, so right here, learn more, you will see that also works perfectly. So great, we are now finished. I hope you enjoyed the project, and now have a great day, and I will see you on the next video. Bye.